P-Record back with another one. I got some Nick Fuentes clips for you guys. First clip that I got for you guys is Nick talking about how Charlie Kirk was pro-Israel, which we know he was pro-Israel his whole career, you know. But then at the end, there was a little switch, you know. In the last 6 months, we noticed that he was critiquing or switching up the narrative about Israel, you know. And Nick right here is just talking about how we have evidence now that links to this actually being true. All I ask is if you guys like, subscribe to the on the video, and comment down below your thoughts on it. And yeah, I'm gonna let you guys get into it. P-Record.
And I want to say at the very beginning, first, we have to separate out two distinct things here, because there really are two distinct claims. And they're related, but they're not automatically connected. And here's what I mean by that. There are people that are claiming, and I think this is just a fact. I don't think this is deniable, because this is in public and in private. People are claiming that Charlie Kirk was changing his opinion on Israel, or changing his position, his alignment, however you want to characterize it. For Charlie Kirk's entire career, you could say he was part of the pro-Israel movement. He was absolutely pro-Israel, going to Israel, hosting Zionists, and he was intolerant of anybody that went against Israel. He did not dissent against Israel, and he did not tolerate dissent against Israel. And that is what characterized his career, his public and private career, for something like 9 years. 9 to 10 years. He had never said anything really critical of Israel up until October 7th, never entertained anything Israel critical at his events or in his organization up until maybe, let's say, this year or the previous year. And so people are claiming that suddenly, because of the war in Gaza, the war in Iran, recent developments, like everybody else, they say Charlie Kirk was changing his tune a little bit. Now, why he was doing that and how much and in what way, that is subject for debate. But broadly speaking, that's the idea, that he was changing his tune a little bit. And I think that is undeniable. That is absolutely true, as evidenced by his contentious relationship with the Israel lobby. They were not happy with him, obviously, as evidenced by his public statements, like on Megyn Kelly, and the way that he hosted Tucker and even Dave Smith at his Turning Point conference in July. The questions he asked Ben Shapiro on his show the morning before he was killed. And now these text messages. Obviously, there was a change happening. But that is altogether separate, or at the minimum distinct from the claim, therefore, that Israel killed him because of it. It is entirely possible that he was undergoing some kind of realignment, and maybe this was just happening at the same time that he was killed. It doesn't automatically mean that Israel shot him for this. Just because we can prove that Charlie was maybe changing his tune a little bit does not imply necessarily that Israel shot him. In order to prove that Charlie Kirk was changing his tune, we need people that knew him. We need statements. We have that. We can prove that with evidence. We have people close to him like Andrew Colvett, Blake Neff, who are at Turning Point. We have people like Tucker and Candace Owens. They all claim that privately, Charlie had intimated to them that he was changing his mind. We also, like I said, have the public evidence. The Megyn Kelly interview, which was very explicit. We have Tucker and Dave Smith at Turning Point. We have rumors about this contentious argument at the Hamptons retreat in August. We have evidence that he was changing his mind. But in order to establish that there was a conspiracy to kill him, we would need hard evidence that Israel had a shooter there. We would need to find the gunman. We would need to find the murder weapon. We would need to find more than what we have. And that is a separate claim. Did they pull the trigger? Did they activate a sleeper cell? Did they have decoys or patsies? That is something that needs to be proven by the government or by evidence from somebody else, a whistleblower. We don't have that yet.
I agree with Nick right there. At the end of the day, while everyone's gonna make up conspiracy theories about what happened, but at the end of the day, I agree with them. We can't. Like I said, I've heard stories, that there was that his mic was the one that it destructed, and that's what caused the bullet wound to come out. Or what we saw, like that's what caused him to die. It wasn't a bullet. So I mean, there's a lot of narratives out there, but I think we just gotta stick with the one right now, and as we know is that Tyler Robinson's the one that shot him. I think we just gotta go with it because the government they're pushing at it, and until we get some real evidence, and until we get some real evidence, it's probably gonna be like that. Besides what Candace Owens putting out the text messages, But okay, I got a second clip for you guys. We're gonna Nick talking about the donors, how Charlie was, like I said, he got in bed with the donors. That's the only downfall of it. He had a lot of donors, a lot of Jewish donors, who were of course pro Israel, and they were giving him a lot of money, and yeah, man. I mean, that's how Turning Point was founded and funded. It's funded by a lot of donors. Millions of dollars. But yeah, here's the clip of Nick, and yeah, enjoy it.
Now, to the point about the text messages, what he said in the texts is very interesting. Because specifically he said that the Jewish donors were pulling the plug on Turning Point, and this had already been known to us. I believe the donor goes by the name of Spillman or Shillman or something like that. He's not a very well-known donor. But there's a Jewish Turning Point donor who this was reported on, I think in the New York Post in the weeks even after Charlie Kirk had been killed. There was a Jewish donor that withheld a $2 million per year contribution and was actually going to redirect that to a different organization. And we knew, even before this text message went out, that the reason this Jewish donor was pulling the money is because the Jews were not happy with Charlie. They saw him as being too lenient to the Israel critics on the right wing, like Tucker, like Dave, others. They didn't like this new line he was taking, whatever it was. If it was anti-Israel, Israel critical, gesturing towards something more, they didn't like that. They pulled the plug. Now, 2 days before Charlie was killed, he says, well, they are leaving me with no choice. I'm being boxed in. I'm going to have to leave the pro-Israel cause because they are intolerant of what I'm trying to do. And I think what is kind of concealed in that message, or maybe what is explicit actually, is that Charlie did not leave the pro-Israel cause. The pro-Israel cause left him. Charlie would have been happy to keep taking the millions of dollars. Do you think he would have turned down he was obviously not happy about it. He didn't say that that he refused the donor money. He didn't say that because of my moral objections or my ideological objections, I'm refusing the money. He said, no, this Jewish donor is taking the money. And he's pissed. He goes, I can't believe this Jewish donor's not giving me money. He's being so unreasonable. If they keep doing this, I'm going to have to leave the cause.
So, I mean, it's facts, dude. I mean, that's what I'm saying. You can't get in bed. You can't get in bed with these donors because they have you by the balls, When people start donating millions of dollars to your foundation or whatever it is, in this case it's Turning Point, they have the leverage because they're the ones putting the money into the company, and they could dictate what happens within Turning Point, they can. And at the end of the day, Charlie ran it, but I mean, you can't mess with you can't mess with them, dude, because they're millionaires and they don't want to play with their money, Third clip I got for you guys is again Israel. They're talking about Mark Levin, saying that he's crazy. That they're flipping their lids. So I'm gonna let Nick get into it, and you guys enjoy it.
I continue to believe that he was not turning on Israel per se. I don't even think he was turning on the pro-Israel donors. I think that the he was put in an impossible situation, and the donors were breathing down his neck, as they always do. It is the pro-Israel side that is intolerant, aggressive. They're like berserkers. And you see how they are. They're insane. The pro-Israel donors, they're all like Mark Levin. They're all these like weaselly, goblin-esque, vicious haters. And you see Mark Levin, he gets on his show and says, Tucker's the worst anti-Semite since Hitler. Like, they're insane. And that's how they all are. And if Charlie is not basically bowing down before the Western Wall, if he's not making 6 million trips back to Israel to kiss the ring, they're lumping him in with the rest. And to me, the real story there is not that Charlie flipped. It's that Israel is alienating literally everybody. Gradually and incrementally over time, they're alienating everybody. All these people that started with questions went from 0 to 60 because they were told by the Jews, you can't ask questions. You're asking questions, you don't support the war, you're an anti-Semite, you're out. And that happened to Candace. That's literally what happened to Candace. She was at Daily Wire and she said, I don't think the Palestinians should be genocided. And Shapiro and Clavin and the Jews at Daily Wire get together and say this. She's out of control. We have to take her out, right? That's what they said about Candace. They would not give her an inch to question. And she split. Same thing with Tucker. You could see that even a year ago, Tucker was a little bit reluctant to criticize Israel. And the heat that he got, I think he was like, now you're pushing for with Iran. Now you lost me too. Megyn Kelly, same story. Charlie Kirk, same story. Me, 10 years ago, same story. It's that they are pushing everybody away. And I would say that Charlie Kirk, he is somebody that wanted to support Israel, did support Israel, was one of their most loyal supporters, and I think if given the opportunity would have accommodated everybody, would have accommodated Shapiro and Josh Hammer and Seth Dillon and Bill Ackman, who he reached out to, and Sean McGuire. All these guys were trying to get involved, but he was also trying to accommodate the other side. And Charlie was trying to have it all ways, but who vetoed this? It was the pro-Israel side. And that's why in the final tally, the last statement we have on this, it's Charlie Kirk saying, I am being boxed in. You pulled the plug on me. You left me with no choice. You're taking away the money. I'm trying to hold this thing together. You're being unreasonable. You're going to force me out of the pro-Israel. And I think that is realistically what took place there.
I agree with that too, Like I said, we all know, again, I'm saying a million times, Charlie wasn't messing with them the last 6 months, and they took offense to that. And they were like, well, if we can't, he's the backbone at the end of the day, a turning point. Without him, turning point. Even if the wife takes it over. So I think they knew that. And they had to punish him. They had to, Last clip I got for you guys is Nick talking about his illiberal stance on race, religion, and just everything, about life. And he talks about Dave Smith, how he's more towards the liberalism, not illiberalism, because Nick, he's not a liberal. He doesn't like liberals. But Dave Smith, he has some liberal tendencies, And when you hear him talk, sometimes he comes off like that. So Nick's going to give his perception on that, and this will be the last clip.
I said, and what seems to be happening is that Dave represents maybe a more moderate or liberal side of the Israel critical side. And whether it's because of this tokenism to soften the blow, or it's because it's ideologically more liberal, I said there's a higher tolerance for that than my position, which is a more radical critique of the whole enchilada, of the whole thing. And, she, I think, was being a little tough. With Dave, I think we really straightened it out. And what we walked away with, spoiler alert if you haven't seen it, is that Dave really is, and I said this to him, lowercase l, liberal. And by that, you can take it as classical liberal, a right liberal, as opposed to a left liberal or a progressive, libertarian. But he comes at it more from the perspective that you've got certain Jews and non-Jews that are pushing things like neoconservatism. And so it's a more of a narrow critique. It says that you don't really have a problem that proceeds from Jewish identity or Jewishness per se. You have some Jewish people, powerful Jewish people, that with a number of non-Jewish people happen to be pushing some aggressive policies, and they're coming together for different reasons. The defense industry, the ideological neocons, these like democratic globalist types like a Dick Cheney, a Condi Rice, and these fanatical like Kudniks and Israeli nationalists. There's this convergence. That's why we're getting it. Whereas me, I am illiberal. I am identitarian. I believe that race and religion are essential, and race and religion imply necessarily political interests. And so, and this was really the rub, is basically Dave is saying it's not the Jews, it's like neocons. And many of them are motivated by Jewish self-interest, whether that's rational or irrational. Me, I'm saying, no, it is Jewish identity in itself. It is, in a nutshell, the Jews. It is the fact that by their nature as a group, they have a history of persecution, a history of resistance to assimilation, a history as a tiny minority that makes them inherently tribalistic, distrusting of outsiders, willing and able to put themselves first in combination with their transnational presence. And I said, really, that it's a deeper critique. And it's really more of a structural critique. And saying that I don't want necessarily to stop sending Israel foreign aid and reset relations with Israel. America needs to reevaluate its liberal premise and say, can we have American-born Jewish billionaires lobbying for Israel, or American-born Jewish billionaires lobbying for open borders or an open society? We have to kind of reflect on whether an open society can tolerate such an aggressive, organized minority pushing for their international or foreign national interest. That's kind of the disagreement. And I don't know that I was surprised, but I felt sort of relieved to hear him say some of the things that he said, because it's like, okay, so I'm not crazy. We don't really agree on everything. Now, we agree on a lot, but there's kind of like a fundamental difference. And I would say that he represents like libertarian, anti-war, really coming at it from a liberal point of view. And I'm not using that to be shitty and say like, well, you're just left wing. I mean, no, like that, everyone's liberal. Everyone's priors are that they are liberal. They believe that everyone's a blank slate. Anyone can believe whatever they want. It's somewhat arbitrary. Whereas I am illiberal. I am identitarian. I do believe in group strategies, group interests. And in a democratic, open society, these various groups are going to come into conflict. And it's actually rational that they do so. Properly understood, the Jews do have a collective self-interest. Whites have a collective self-interest. Blacks have a collective self-interest. And politics increasingly becomes a forum for those interests to be mediated and increasingly actually to be sharpened and to become a source for conflict.
It's facts, Nick, over there talking about Dave Smith and how he has his own liberal tendencies. It's like Nick said, we're all liberal at the end of the day. We all believe the things we want to believe, But I'm with Nick on that too, just going about race and religion, I think those are the two things that matters right now in politics, because everyone wants to bring that up, But if you guys like this video, like, subscribe, comment down below your thoughts, This is P Record, out.